Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you're part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and get ready for a story that will leave you thinking. And if you love inspiring tales, a like goes a long way. You're going to jail for these shoes. The words echoed through the empty sports store, cutting through the boy's sobs like a knife. The 13-year-old's fingers trembled around the box of budget sneakers as the security guard's hand clamped down on his bony shoulder. That's when a figure in a gray hoodie stopped browsing basketball gear and turned toward the commotion. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the nearly deserted store. Tuesday afternoon at Westfield Mall was quiet enough that everyone heard the guard's threat. The skinny teenager, dressed in a frayed t-shirt 2 sizes too big, couldn't stop the tears streaming down his dirt-smudged face. The manager, a thin man with perpetually pursed lips, was already reaching for the phone, security cameras capturing every humiliating moment. "Let's take this to the back office," the guard announced loudly, clearly enjoying the audience of the few scattered shoppers who had stopped to stare. He squeezed the boy's shoulder harder, making him wince. "Stealing is stealing, kid. Doesn't matter what sob story you've got." The hooded figure in the adjacent aisle put down the basketball he'd been examining and began moving toward them with deliberate steps, his massive frame casting an unmistakable shadow. If this moment made you feel something, imagine what's coming next. Hit that like button and stay with us. Subscribe now. The manager's office was small and sterile. A desk, 3 chairs, and a wall of security monitors. The boy sat hunched, shoulders curved inward as if trying to disappear. "Name and phone number," demanded the manager, sliding a form across the desk. "We need to call your parents before the police arrive." The teenager's voice cracked as he whispered, "Please, I just needed them for my brother." "The kid's at school." He trailed off, knuckles white around the shoebox he still clutched. The $39.99 price tag seemed to mock him from its perch. The door opened suddenly, the frame nearly filled by the broad shoulders of a man whose presence changed the energy of the room instantly. The cap and hoodie didn't hide what generations of WWE fans and moviegoers would recognize anywhere. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had entered the room, and he wasn't smiling. The security guard nearly choked mid-sentence, his authoritative posture deflating instantly. The manager rose halfway out of his chair, mouth agape. "Mind if I join this conversation?" Johnson's voice was calm, but carried the unmistakable weight of someone used to being heard. Without waiting for permission, he pulled up the 3rd chair and sat down beside the boy. "I heard what happened out there." His eyes met the teenager's, who looked simultaneously terrified and confused by this unexpected turn of events. "I'd like to understand what's going on here." The manager recovered first, straightening his tie. "Sir, with all due respect, this is store business. This young man was caught shoplifting, and we have a zero-tolerance policy." Johnson nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "I understand policies. I also understand people." He turned back to the boy. "I think there's more to this story, isn't there?" The teenager's eyes darted between the 3 adults, weighing years of distrust against a sliver of hope. The room fell silent as the celebrity's presence seemed to expand, commanding attention without effort. The security guard shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado replaced by uncertainty. The boy stared at the floor, fingers still wrapped around the box. "These aren't even my size," he finally whispered. Johnson leaned forward slightly. "Who are they for?" Something in his tone, gentle yet strong, created a safe space in the midst of what had been a nightmare for the boy. "My little brother," the teenager said, voice barely audible. "He's 10, his shoes have holes, and the kid's at school." Tears welled up again. "They call him Trash Boy. He stopped wanting to go to school." The boy's words hung in the air, weighted with unspoken history. The manager's expression remained unmoved, but Johnson's eyes had softened. He'd heard enough to recognize a story he knew well, the struggle of a family on the edge, where pride and necessity waged daily battle. He made a decision in that moment that would change more lives than he realized. Things are about to take a turn. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe, like our video, and keep watching. "I'd like to speak with this young man alone for a moment," Johnson said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. The manager began to protest, but the look in Johnson's eyes silenced him. 5 minutes. The manager conceded reluctantly, motioning for the security guard to follow him out. When the door closed, Johnson removed his cap and hoodie. The boy's eyes widened in full recognition. "You're just a guy who's been where you are," Johnson interrupted gently. "Not exactly the same spot, but I know what it's like when you can't afford what you need." He gestured to the shoes. "Tell me about your brother." The floodgates opened. The boy explained how their mother worked 2 jobs but still struggled to pay rent. How his brother had been wearing the same shoes for over a year. How he'd tried to patch them with tape and marker to hide the holes. How the bullying had gotten so bad his brother cried himself to sleep. "I tried to get a job," the boy said, "but no one will hire a 13-year-old. I didn't know what else to do." Johnson nodded, his expression thoughtful rather than judgmental. "What's your name?" "Marcus," the boy replied. "And your brother?" "Jamal." Marcus watched cautiously as Johnson pulled out his phone. "Marcus, I want to help, but first we need to make this right." He gestured toward the door. "Stealing isn't the answer, even when you're desperate. There are always other options, even when it doesn't feel like it." For the first time, Marcus's shoulders relaxed slightly. Johnson continued, "I'm going to talk to the manager. Would you be willing to apologize?" Marcus nodded, relief washing over his face. "Yes, sir. I just didn't want Jamal to keep getting hurt." Outside the office, word had spread through the mall that The Rock was in the sports store. A small crowd had gathered, phones recording through the glass storefront. The security guard noticed first, nudging the manager who was pacing outside the office. "We've got a situation," he muttered, pointing to the growing audience. The manager's expression shifted from annoyance to sudden awareness. This was no longer just about store policy. When Johnson emerged from the office with Marcus, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Phone cameras flashed and whispers rippled through the onlookers. The manager approached with a strained smile, suddenly aware of the public relations opportunity, or nightmare, unfolding in his store. "Perhaps we can resolve this matter discreetly," he suggested, eyeing the growing crowd. Johnson placed a protective hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Marcus has something he'd like to say." The boy stepped forward, still clutching the shoebox. "I'm sorry for trying to take these without paying," he said, voice steady despite the audience. "It was wrong. I was just trying to help my brother." The manager nodded stiffly, clearly wanting this to end. "Apology accepted. We'll let it go this time." But Johnson wasn't finished. "Actually," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I think there's a better solution here." He turned to address the crowd directly. "Sometimes good people make desperate choices when systems fail them." The phones recorded every word as Johnson's impromptu speech began to transform from a simple intervention into something much more powerful. This story is only getting deeper. What would you do in this situation? Comment below, and let's talk. "I grew up poor," Johnson's voice carried through the now silent store. "There were times my mom and I didn't know how we'd make rent or buy food. Times when I wore the same clothes until they fell apart." His authenticity cut through the spectacle of celebrity. reaching something human in everyone present. This young man wasn't stealing for himself. He was trying to protect his little brother from bullying because the shoes he needs cost $40 that their family doesn't have. Marcus stood straighter now, dignity returning to his posture as Johnson spoke. "What if instead of punishment, we offered opportunity?" Johnson turned to the manager. "I'd like to buy every pair of shoes in Marcus's brother's size, and I want to offer Marcus a job." The manager blinked in confusion. "A job? But he's 13, yes," Johnson continued. "But your store could create a youth program, after-school work, mentorship, legal, above board, and life-changing." The challenge in Johnson's voice was clear. The crowd had grown larger and several people were nodding in agreement, some even applauding. The manager's corporate mask slipped, revealing genuine uncertainty. Johnson pressed the advantage. "I'll fund the program myself for the first year. All you need to provide is the opportunity." He looked around at the watching faces, many recording this moment. How many of you would support a store that gives kids like Marcus a chance instead of a criminal record? The response was immediate. Cheers, raised hands, nods of approval. A woman called out, "My son would join that program tomorrow." The security guard, who had been watching silently, stepped forward. "I could help supervise. I used to be a youth coach before." He didn't finish, but something in his expression had softened. Marcus looked up at Johnson with stunned disbelief. "You'd do that for me? For kids like me?" Johnson's smile finally appeared, warm and genuine. "No, Marcus, we're not doing this for you. We're doing it with you. There's a difference." He addressed the crowd again. "This isn't about charity. It's about change. Real change doesn't happen from the top down. It happens when people like Marcus get the chance to rise up." The manager's resistance crumbled under the weight of public opinion and Johnson's charisma. "I'll need to call corporate, but..." He hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. "Actually, no. This is my store. We can make this happen." The crowd erupted in applause. What had begun as a potential arrest had transformed into something revolutionary. Johnson pulled out his phone again, this time not hiding his actions. "I'm making a personal donation to start this program right now," he announced, tapping on his screen, "and I'm challenging others to match it." Immediately, phones throughout the crowd lit up as people began donating. The security guard approached Marcus. "I owe you an apology, son. I didn't listen." The boy nodded, accepting with a maturity beyond his years. Johnson watched the exchange with satisfaction. This wasn't just about one boy or one pair of shoes anymore. It had become a moment where a community recognized its power to change its own story. He caught Marcus's eye and saw something new there. Not gratitude, but partnership. That was the real victory. Not a celebrity rescue, but a human connection that recognized dignity in everyone involved. It's not over yet. The best part is coming. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Three hours later, Marcus walked out of the store with more than just the shoes for Jamal. He carried employment paperwork, a training schedule, and a newfound sense of purpose. Johnson walked beside him, having exchanged numbers with both Marcus and his mother, who had arrived in tears after receiving a call explaining the situation. The crowd had dispersed, but their impact remained in the form of a fully funded youth employment initiative. "Remember," Johnson said as they neared the mall exit, "what happened today wasn't magic. It was people recognizing a broken system and deciding to fix it together." Marcus nodded, still processing the day's dramatic turn. "I thought I was going to jail. Instead, I got a job." Johnson laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Life can change in an instant, but usually It takes work. Your work. He pointed to the papers in Marcus's hand. This is just the beginning. Outside the mall, as Marcus reunited with his mother and brother, Johnson stepped back to give the family privacy. Jamal's face lit up as Marcus handed him the shoebox. Not just any shoes now, but a symbol of his brother's love and a stranger's kindness. The security guard approached Johnson away from the cameras and attention. "Thank you," he said simply. "I needed that reminder about what this job should really be about." Johnson nodded. Second chances matter, for everyone involved. News of the incident spread rapidly across social media. The hashtag #RockSolid began trending as the video circulated, showing not just celebrity intervention, but community transformation. The sports store's corporate office, initially alarmed, quickly embraced the program as their new flagship community initiative. By evening, 3 other retail chains had announced similar youth employment opportunities. What began as a desperate act by a 13-year-old boy had catalyzed a movement that would eventually provide jobs for hundreds of young people across the country. 6 months later, Johnson returned to the store unannounced, cap and hoodie in place again. He found Marcus helping a young customer find basketball shoes, confidently explaining the differences in ankle support and traction. The youth program had expanded to 15 participants, with Marcus now serving as a peer mentor. The security guard, now the program coordinator, spotted Johnson and smiled with genuine warmth. The store had transformed, not just in policy but in spirit. When Marcus noticed Johnson, he excused himself and approached with a handshake, instead of the starstruck awe of their first meeting. "Jamal's doing great in school now," he reported proudly. "No more bullying." Johnson nodded, genuinely pleased. "And you?" Marcus stood taller, his confidence evident. "I'm saving for college, business management." The lesson had come full circle. Not that crime deserves punishment, but that understanding deserves a chance. Sometimes the most powerful words aren't threats or demands, but simply, "Tell me your story." And sometimes the most powerful act isn't forcing compliance, but creating opportunity. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, that made all the difference. Wow, what a story. If this moved you, imagine what else we have for you. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and let us know what you think.